Today we'll navigate through scenarios where magnitude matters. Hello math learners, Hassan here. Today we are diving into the world of absolute value equations. By the end of this video, you'll not only conquer absolute value equations but also understand the unique approach needed to solve them. So let's begin. So first we'll explain the meaning of absolute value. Absolute value means how far a number is from zero. Now this can be explained using a number line. Here we can see that this 6 is 6 units from 0. This negative 6 is also 6 units from 0. So the absolute value of 6 is 6 and the absolute value of negative 6 is also 6. So you can note that absolute value does not take any sign into the account. More examples are here. The absolute value of negative 9 is 9. The absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of 0 is 0. Because when you are at 0, there is no distance from 0. So that's why the absolute value of 0 is 0. And lastly, the absolute value of negative 156 is 156. Now, how do you actually represent the absolute value sign? We actually put two vertical bars on either side of the number or expression to represent the absolute value symbol. We call these bars. So we have the absolute value of negative 5 written like this, which equals to 5. And the absolute value of 7 is 7. So whenever we see these two vertical bars, that means it's representing the absolute value symbol. Now let's look at some of the properties of absolute value. Let's say we have a and b as two real numbers. Then the following four properties must be true. Number one is the absolute value of any number must be greater than or equal to 0. We cannot have any absolute value less than 0 because we are counting distance from 0. So we cannot have any distance less than 0. Number two is the absolute value of any negative number must be equal to the absolute value of any positive number because we are having same distance on either side of the number line. Number three is the multiplicative property of absolute value. Number three states that the absolute value of a times b is equal to the absolute value of a times the absolute value of b. Number four is the division property of absolute value. It states that the absolute value of a over b is equal to the absolute value of a divided by the absolute value of b. There is a condition for number four is that the b cannot be equal to 0. Now, how can you solve these absolute value equations? So here is a quick trick. To solve absolute value equation, we'll need to solve two related linear equations. We'll need to create two related linear equations by taking a positive value of the constant on the right side and also taking a negative value of the constant on the right side. So here is the strategy. We'll get rid of the absolute value symbol from the left side by putting a positive value of the constant and also putting a negative value of the constant because this absolute value can lie on either side of the number line. Now, once we have these two linear equations, we can use the one-step, two-step, or multi-step equation strategies to solve this variable x for each case. Now, here is a quick exception that when this constant c is less than 0, we cannot have any solution for this absolute value equation. Absolute value number always indicates that the number is greater than or equal to 0. This is the first property that we learned for the absolute value equations. Here is a practice problem. We have the absolute value of x minus 4 equal to 6. We need to solve this equation and also need to graph the solutions if possible. Let's try to apply our steps. The first step is we write down the two related linear equations for this equation. So we have x minus 4 equal to 6 and also x minus 4 equal to negative 6. Now you can see that this is a one-step equation. To solve the variable, we simply take this 4 to the other side and solve the value of x. The second step is to solve the variable. So we add 4 on each side. We get x equals 10, and also we get x equals negative 2. Now let's try to graph this on the number line. If you graph it on the number line, we can see that here is the 10 and here is the negative 2. Now this absolute value of x minus 4 equal to 6 indicates that from this origin point of 4, 10 is 6 units to the right and negative 2 is 6 units to the left. So you can draw a conclusion that absolute value of x is same as absolute value of x minus 0. This is the origin point that we are talking about. So if this point change to any number, we identify that as the original point. So over here, x minus 4 indicates that 4 is the origin point. And we have these two solutions on either side of this 4. Now let's look at this problem. We have the absolute value of 3x plus 1 equals to negative 5. Let's try to see if we can solve this equation. And we'll also graph the solutions if possible. Now we know from the first properties that absolute value of any number or expressions must be greater than or equal to 0. So this equation does not have any solution. So the answer is the equation has no solution because the absolute value of an expression must be greater than or equal to 0. The absolute value of 3x plus 1 cannot equal negative 5 because negative 5 is less than 0. Now we'll see problems having equations with two absolute values. The strategies remain the same. So here is the general strategy. We'll have two absolute value symbols on either side of the equal sign. We'll get rid of the absolute value symbol and we'll make the right expression to be positive and also negative to create two linear equations. Then we'll solve the variable x using the multi-step equation solving strategies or two-step equation solving strategies. So here is a problem. We have the absolute value of 3x minus 4 equal to the absolute value of x. So the quick strategies are write down the two related linear equations, then solve for x, and finally check the solution. And we'll talk about why checking the solution is important for these types of scenarios. So let's do our first step. We'll get rid of the absolute value symbols on both sides. So we'll make the right side to be positive and negative. Now to solve for x, we'll get rid of this x from the right side to the left side, and also we'll move this negative x from the right side to the left side. So we'll subtract this x and we'll add this x. So we'll subtract this x. We get 2x minus 4 equals 0. Over here, we add x on both sides. So you get 4x minus 4 equals 0. Then we simply add 4 to both sides. So now we have 2x equals 4. For this one, we have 4x equals 4. Now we divide both sides by the coefficient. So over here we get x equals 2. Over here we get x equals 1. So this is the second step, solving for x. Now we'll check the solution. Let's see how we can check the solution over here. To check the solution, we'll just simply take this value of x onto the main equation. So first we'll check x equals 2. If you do that, we have 3 times 2 minus 4 equals the absolute value of 2. So we have 3 times 2, that is 6. 6 minus 4. The absolute value of 6 minus 4 is the absolute value of 2, which satisfies our equation over here. So both sides are matching. Now let's try to put x equals 1. If we put x equals 1, let's see what we get. We have 3 times 1 minus 4 equals the absolute value of 1 on the right side. So now we have 3 times 1, that is 3 minus 4. So we get negative 1. The absolute value of negative 1 equals to the absolute value of positive 1. Now this is our second property for the absolute value equation. So in this case, both solutions are satisfying the original equation. So our solutions are x equals 2 and x equals 1. Now why do you have to check this? Because it is possible for a solution to be extraneous. An extraneous solution is an apparent solution that must be rejected because it does not satisfy the original equation. And we'll see an example over here. Let's try to solve this absolute value equation with the same strategy. We'll try to get rid of this absolute value symbol by making the right side to be positive and negative. So we'll create two linear equations. So the first equation, 2x plus 12 equals 4x. And the second equation is 2x plus 12 equals negative 4x. So we'll solve the x by taking the variable on the left side and the constant term on the right side. So over here, let's try to solve it quickly. So we'll subtract 4x from both sides here. So we have negative 2x plus 12 equals 0. Then we subtract 12 from both sides. We get negative 2x equals negative 12. So we divide both sides by negative 2. So we get x equals 6. Let's do the same strategy over here. We'll add 4x on both sides. Adding 4x gives us 6x plus 12 equals 0. Now we subtract 12 from both sides. We get 6x equals negative 12. Divide both sides by 6. We get x equals negative 2. Now we'll check this solution over here. If we put x equals 6, let's see what you get. 2 times 6 plus 12 equals 4 times 6. So you get 2 times 6, that is 12 plus 12. 4 times 6 is 24. So the 12 and 12 add up to 24. So the absolute value of 24 equals to 24. This is correct. But if you use negative 2, let's see what you get over here. 2 times negative 2 plus 12 equals 4 times negative 2. So 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 plus 12 is 8. So the absolute value of 8 cannot equal negative 8. Remember, the absolute value of any number cannot be less than 0. So this is incorrect. So this solution does not satisfy the original equation. In this case, our solution is x equals 6. Okay, let's see how we can solve these absolute value equations. So the first step is that we need to isolate the absolute value expression. Once we do that, then we need to check what constant we have on the right side. If it is greater than or equal to 0, then we solve the two related linear equations. If it is less than 0, that means the absolute value equation does not have any solution, because by the property or by the law of absolute value equation, it cannot be less than 0. So let's look at this first one. We have 5 plus the absolute value quantity of 8 plus 10n equals 53. So you can subtract both sides by 5 so that I can get these isolated. So if I do subtract, so these 5 cancels out. We have absolute value of 8 plus 10n equals 48. So you can see that this 48 is greater than or equal to 0. So now we can go to the next step. Now we can set up two related linear equations. The first one is 8 plus 10n equals 48. Or the second one is 8 plus 10n equals negative 48. Now to solve this variable, we just apply the rules of solving equations, like one step, two step, or multi-step equations. In this case, you can see that we just need 2 steps to get rid of this 8 and 10. So first we subtract 8 from both sides. If we subtract 8 from both sides, we get 10n equals 40. Now to get n, we just divide by 10 on both sides. We get n equals 4. Now we have this other linear equation. Again, we subtract both sides by 8. Now in this case, if you subtract by 8, negative 48 minus 8, that is going to give us negative 56. Divide by 10. We get n equals negative 5.6. Awesome. These are the two solutions for this absolute value equation. Let's look at the second problem right here. Here we can see that we have absolute value quantity of 6v plus 7 over 9 equals 1. So we have a fraction bar. To isolate these absolute value quantity 6v plus 7, I need to get rid of this 9. So I have to do multiplication on both sides. So if I do multiply on both sides, I get absolute value of 6v plus 7 equals 9. Again, I can see that this 9 is greater than or equal to 0. So I can set up two related linear equations. So I get 6v plus 7 equals 9. Or the second one is 6v plus 7 equals negative 9. Okay, now let's go to the next part. We need to get rid of the 6 and 7 from the left side to get the v isolated. So first subtract 7. If you do subtract 7, we get 6v equals 9 minus 7 is 2. Now to get v isolated, divide by 6. We get v equals 2 over 6 is 1/3. For the second one, we have to subtract 7. If we do subtract by 7, we have 6v equals negative 16. Negative 9 minus 7 is negative 16. We divide by 6. And if we simplify 16 over 6, you can divide by 2, we get v equals -8 over 3. That's how we solve these two related linear equations. Let's look at this number 3 right here. Here we can see that we have an absolute value quantity of -k plus 1 plus 3 equals 9. So I need to get rid of these 3 from the left side. So I subtract 3. If we do subtract 3, we get absolute value quantity of -k plus 1 equals 9 minus 3 is 6. Again, we can see that this 6 is greater than or equal to 0. So I can set up these two related linear equations. So I have these -k plus 1 equals 6, or -k plus 1 equals -6. So now we just solve these two equations. So first we can get rid of this 1. So we subtract 1 from both sides. We have -k equals 6 minus 1 is 5. Now this -k means it's -1k. So I need to get rid of these -1 by dividing both sides by -1. So if I do divide by -1, I get k equals -5. So this is the first solution. Now let's look at the second one. Again, we subtract both sides by 1. So we have -k equals -6 minus 1, that is -7. Again, we divide both sides by -1 because there is an invisible 1 right here. So divide by -1, we get k equals, this time it's +7 because these two negative signs will cancel out to a positive sign. For number 4 right here, let's see what we get for this one. We have absolute value quantity of -10 v plus 4. We add 3 on both sides. We get 84. Now again, this 84 is greater than or equal to 0. So you can just write these two related linear equations. -10 v plus 4 equals 84, or -10 v plus 4 equals -84. So we just switch the signs for this quantity. Now you can solve these two related linear equations. So first we get rid of this 4. We subtract 4 on both sides. We have -10 v equals 80. Divide both sides by -10. We get v equals -8. Now we have this second equation. For this second equation, we have -10v plus 4 equals -84. So you subtract both sides by 4. And we have -10v. These 4 cancels out. We have -84 minus 4, that is -88. We divide both sides by -10. We get v equals, these two negative signs will cancel out to a plus, 88 over 10, that is 8.8. Perfect. And there you have it. We just broke down the concept of absolute value and understood its significance. We also navigated through the process of solving basic absolute value equations. Solving such equations is a fundamental skill in algebra, providing insights into the multiple possibilities that mathematical expressions may encompass. That's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Now let's get to study.